Hello, everyone. So, we are here today to have a look at the overall context of CAT 2022. So, we'll be looking at whatever happened across the three slots today. And I hope all of you have taken it or are planning to take it in the future. So, this should be useful to you to understand what exactly went on. This is a panel discussion, and we have with us Manish sir. We also have with us Abhishek sir, and we have with us Parmeshwar sir. So all four of us will be looking at the test, and the beauty of the discussion is that we have taken it in different slots. So we'll be able to present to you a picture of what exactly it looked like in every slot. And then we discussed this, and we had a word with more than 500 odd students throughout the day. And this entire analysis that we are going to share is a result of that entire discussion that we have had with the students that we spoke, right? So we will look at what exactly was the nature of the test. So we have already discussed it in each of the live analysis as to what exactly had happened. So we will just cover this slide quickly, and then we will move on to the sectional overview. So again, CAT 22 consisted of three sections, 40 minutes per section. It was a 2-hour test. The total number of questions was 66, out of which 49 were MCQs and 17 were TITAs. The verbal ability reading comprehension section consisted of 24 questions. The data interpretation, logical reasoning section comprised of 20 questions. And the QA section had 22 questions in it. Right? There was a new question type that appeared this time in the verbal ability section. So, Abhishek sir, would you like to talk about it?
Right. Thank you, Shashank sir. So this new question type was called paragraph completion. In essence, you had one sentence given at the top of a short paragraph, similar to the length of your para summary paragraph. And there were 4 gaps that were given, labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. And the objective was just to put the given sentence at one of those placeholders. It wasn't a TITA question, it was an MCQ. So in essence, in the 4 radio buttons, you just had those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So it was a variant, I would say, of a para jumble where there's effectively, let's say, something like a one sentence missing, something like that. But on the whole, yeah, it was a slight bit of a googly that might have thrown off a couple of kids. But again, those who know the basics of how to work on para jumbles and odd sentence should not have found too much difficulty in cracking questions. Also, there were just 2 questions of this nature. So, I mean, the people who are a bit skeptical of attempting could have gone ahead and tried something else and focus their energies on the other questions.
Right. So that was the surprise element in verbal ability. When it came to the logical reasoning data interpretation section, so last year we had 2 sets that were consisting of 6 questions each, and another couple of sets which had 4 questions each. This year, all the sets that were there had 5 questions each. So that was one minor change when it came to the LRDI section. And in terms of quant, it was supposed, or the sort of take that we had from a lot of students was that it was supposedly slightly more difficult compared to that of CAT 2021. Now, what we will do is we will move on to the individual sections, and we will see what exactly can we infer from what happened. So, in terms of verbal ability and reading comprehension section, RCs were there. So, they comprised of 16 questions out of 24. And there were 4 passages. Each passage had 4 questions each. In terms of verbal ability, there were 3 parajumbles questions wherein there were 4 sentences given to you, and you had to rearrange them to form a coherent paragraph. 3 summary-based questions, as usual, 1 paragraph of what 3, 4, 5 sentences, followed by 4 alternative summaries. You have to select the best possible summary, and 2 para-completion questions, as Abhishek sir just mentioned. In terms of slot 1, we are going to discuss the passages. So there were 4 passages. The order in which I have written these slot 1 passages is basically the order in which they should have been attempted ideally. So the easiest passage was based on supernatural figures, wherein we spoke about the entire concept of undead and how it has changed over a lot of eras, right? So that was basically the passage. It was a very interesting read. In fact, the source material is a book on supernatural figures, so that was something very interesting. The questions were also fairly straightforward and doable, so that could have been managed. The next passage that we would have recommended students to try during the test was on the Chinese or the Oriental and Western views on imitation. So, what exactly comprises as imitation and whether it's a good thing to be taken positively or not. So, again, a very interesting passage, a very easy and quick read. If someone would have just gone through it, would have been nice. But the questions were slightly on the difficult side compared to the supernatural figures passage. The third passage was on this concept of stoicism. Again, if you knew the concept, there was nothing more to the passage than the concept of stoicism. Would have attempted it. And the last passage on political philosophy, or essentially looking at technology from a critical perspective, it had all your Marxist and socialism and capitalism and whatnot. So that was probably the most difficult passage of slot one. In terms of overall attempts, around 16 to 18 questions, if you would have attempted across BA and RC, it would have been a good attempt. And when I say good attempt, it essentially translates into somewhere around 96 or 97% right, with an accuracy of around 80%. So that was the take on slot one. Slot two, Manish sir.
Uh, Thanks, Shashank sir. About slot two, I personally agree with the first choice. The RC with cephalopods camouflage was the easiest one. And most of the students I interacted with after the test got over, they also claimed the same. So I believe this was the clear winner. I am happy for those who could identify this as the easiest set and they haven't missed it. After this, technical and social dualism, that RC was interesting. Something that can be read without much difficulty and can be understood well. So we would like to put it as the second best RC that students should have attempted. And then that comes a little more challenging set of RCs. The third RC in our priority list would be musicking and modern humanity RC. That was a little difficult with respect to the other two RCs. And the last priority would be the RC with about institutions. As far as difficulty level is concerned, slot 1 and slot 2 were very, very identical. So I will agree with Shashank sir's estimation for his slot. I'd like to go with the 16 to 18 attempts with 80% as an accuracy as a something that students can consider a good attempt. Over to you, Abhishek sir. Are you on mute?
Thanks, Manish sir. So the obvious easiest passage was the bios and technos differentiation, or rather the convergence of bios and technos in the third slot. Lots of specific detailed questions. Even if there were some inferential questions, they were fairly simple. The second priority-wise passage would have been the stunting of intelligence through because of software. Sorry, and again, it had one or two inferential questions. There was a variant of the main idea question, I would say, which says that instead of giving you 4 options in sentences, they just said which of the following keywords talks about the main idea. So that was again solvable. I would put the social disorganization and crime and the impact of Oriental literature, both passages similar in terms of difficulty level. The Oriental literature was difficult purely because of the readability, the toughness of the concepts, and a couple of twisted questions with double negatives, something like none follows except and things like that. And the social disorganization and crime, a couple of interesting options were there with a little bit of ambiguity. But again, once you read through them, you'll understand. So for those two reasons, these two passages fall under the difficult category, and they should have been left for the later part. But on the whole, overall, as compared to from what I hear from students about slots 1 and 2, this was on the whole a slightly easier, comparatively easier section as compared to the previous one. So that's why our numbers are somewhere around 17 to 19. But again, the difficulty level is not varying drastically. It's just a question or two here and there. So those in slot 3 need not worry that the difficulty levels are changing drastically. So we've got a 17 to 19 ideal attempts, and similarly an 80 to 85% accuracy.
All right. So that was about verbal ability and reading comprehension. In terms of data interpretation and logical reasoning, there were 4 sets of 5 questions each. So that was one minor change, as we have discussed on the first slide. In terms of slot 1, the 4 sets that were present were on the basis of distribution of tokens. So again, but not a very difficult set for someone who could factorize numbers quickly, right? So we have to just figure out how to factorize things and how to figure out the overlaps. So that was essentially what needed to be done, and it was possibly the easiest set of slot one. Just that it was based on mathematical reasoning, so that might have maybe taken some people away from it, but otherwise it was a fine set to attend. The second set in the pecking order would be the one on four people who scored 12 goals in eight hockey games. So again, a fairly straightforward set. And if you had a background in this logical puzzle that we call Kakuro, then you would have been able to split that 12 very quickly among the four people that existed. So that was one thing that if you had a background in it, that would have given you a slight edge in breaking down that 12 into smaller pieces. Otherwise, the questions were fairly straightforward. And for the first two sets, if you would have got the initial entire distribution right, then you could have attempted all the five questions directly. There was maybe one question wherein there was some additional information that was given to you, but otherwise it was fairly straightforward. In terms of the third most difficult set, so I have put metro map and core metro lines as the third most difficult set. It was very easy to read, it was very easy to understand, but there was a lot of data that was present in this particular set, and a lot of things varied. I am sure that some of you might be surprised once the official answer keys come out in terms of what you answers you have provided and what exactly was the right answer, because I'm sure some of you might have mistaken the starting point and the 10-minute, 15-minute delay somewhere, right? So that is one thing. That's why I have put it at the third place. It was a tricky set. You could have attempted it, but you would not be sure whether you have got all five correct, or you have got 4-1, or 3-2, or 2-3, or got forward 0-5, right? So anything could have happened in this particular. And the last one was simply a difficult set because it was very complicated, right? There were a lot of things happening. So we had men, women, people interested, not interested, good at singing, dancing, both, neither. So all those things, round one, round two, round three, or day one, day two, day three, whichever way you put it. So a lot of complication was there in this particular set, and so we have classified it as a difficult one. So that is basically the pecking order. In terms of a good number of attempts, we have mentioned 10 to 12 attempts here, which basically meant two complete sets and maybe one or two questions or the theta questions from the remaining two sets. So that's basically what we mean when we say good attempts being 10 to 12. With an 80-85% accuracy, you should again be placed at a 96-ish, 97-ish percentile when it comes to this section from slot one. Over to you, Manish sir, for slot two.
Thanks, sir. As far as second slot is concerned, LRDI, all the four sets were very close to each other. In the second analysis that we presented today afternoon, it was found that they were not easily distinguishable as far as difficulty level is concerned. So to give you an idea, the two shortest appearing sets were actually a little more difficult than the other two. So greater amount of effort needed to be put just to identify the difficulty level. And in fact, I had to talk to many students just to understand which one was overall the easiest for them. I couldn't break the tie completely. The easiest, however, according to all of them, was the set with 4 companies, multiple years and revenue and cost. It was lengthy when we see it at the first glance, but it turned out to be very manageable ultimately. So that was a pleasant surprise for those who chose it as the first set. Now there is a clear confusion between which should have been the second set. Whether should it be the set with 3 sales representatives who were trying to sell some items in some household along with some ratios that they were targeting, or it should be that warehouse set along with probabilities mentioned along with destinations. So people are confused, and that's okay. We don't need to break the tie every single time. So second and third set, I would like to keep it as it's a joint position. However, that one set, it looked like a Venn diagram set. I dealt it in a tabular format as well. The set with FD approval, it had some catch moments. So when they said that you need EU approval, you need FD approval, things were fine till then. But the moment they said that there may be some products with both the approvals, suddenly things went haywire. So that makes this set the most difficult set. Opinions may vary, but this is more or less what students gave as their opinion. As far as good attempts are concerned, I'll rate slot 1 and slot 2 both near equal after what Shashank sir has given an idea about his slot, and good attempts would be in the range of 10 to 12 with really good accuracy. Over to you, Parmeshwar sir.
So as far as slot 3 is concerned, the first set which people should have attempted is the mortality rate. It might look difficult, but ultimately I have taken only close to 7 to 8 minutes to crack this because it's mostly addition and subtraction to arrive at the answer. The main thing was how to, let's say, read the data, let's say, in different year. For example, in 1980, if someone was between 20 to 30 age, if you want to go for 1990 data, you have to think of the person is going to fall in the age bracket of 30 to 40, and then 40 to 50, and then 50 to 60. So if you can relate that particular chain, people can crack this particular set, and maybe even a decent student can crack this set under 10-minute timeline. So this should have been the set which should have been attempted by most of you. Then if I look at the second possibility, the second case has to be the number of new cases in a city with 4 neighborhood. And again, if I say people who are good with number crunching skill, because if I want, let's say 5 numbers are there, the addition has to be equals to a 14 with the help of the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3. It's only possible if you have, let's say 4, 3, and 1, 2, because you only need to reduce or subtract a 1 from the maximum possible total of 15, which can be achieved. So again, people with a good number crunching skill can crack set number 2 also decently. So maybe if someone have attempted, so what I have done initially in the 3-minute timeline, I have gone through each set. I've closely seen, okay, what type of data is available. And then my set number 1 was mortality rate. And then I moved to the number of cases wala scenario. And that was also very much manageable. Then the last 2 sets, especially the computer science one, was difficult. I managed to crack maybe 3. I don't know whether they are right or wrong. But in that particular set, there was so many information, and especially one particular point, maybe point number 4 or point number 5, regarding some both courses with grade B has 50%. That was difficult to decode. And because of this, I might not, let's say, able to solve all the 5 questions. And believe me, I have used some jugaad. Even let's say without knowing that particular point, I was able to crack 2 to 3 questions of that particular set. So overall, if I look at slot number 3, 2 sets were definitely manageable. So if people attempt maybe 9 to 10 question with the accuracy of maybe mistake, 1 or 2 mistake, if you get a score of close to 25, 26, I think you will be in a driving seat to get a good percentile as far as DI is concerned.
Okay. So now let's look at quant. So quant across the 3 slots that we had, the split was more or less similar. So 8 questions out of the 22 questions that were there were from arithmetic across the 3 slots that we had. Algebra was also more or less similar, 5 questions in slot 1 and 3 and 6 questions in slot 2. One major difference was seen in terms of modern math, because in slot 2 we had 4 questions in modern math, but only 1 question from numbers, and in the other 2 slots we had 6 and 5 questions respectively. So that is what the entire quantitative ability section looked like across the 3 slots. In terms of slot 1, if I have to sort of look at the overall picture, some 14 to 15 questions could have been attempted easily. So compared to CAT 2021, the questions were fairly doable, as in they were slightly easier, you can say, maybe, for someone who had gone through slot 1 or who had gone through CAT 2021 rather. But again, considering that DI was slightly difficult, we had a new question type, and slot 1 generally has that advantage where people might end up messing up a bit because of the surprises. Again, 14 to 15 questions is what we have looked at. Maybe a couple of questions here and there were potential speed breakers, wherein you might not have been able to arrive at the answer. So one thing that comes to my mind is the peanut, walnut, and cashew nut question. So that was there. Again, it was on the difficult side. And even after you have had, let's say, 5-7 minutes to crack that particular question, even then, it was very difficult for someone to say that something was an answer convincing. Otherwise, the test was fairly straightforward in terms of quant, a few questions on modulus here and there, and one question wherein you had to take that leap of faith and figure out that, okay, 5, 12, 13 is a Pythagorean triple. So if you got that kind of an instinctive thing and you went ahead with it, maybe you could have cracked that question as well. But overall, a fairly doable section. Yeah, Manish sir?
agree with you. In fact, I also had that one triplet moment during the paper, and 18, 24, 30, I believe. And yes, there was this wonderful question of 15,000 factorial and then n factorial, n factorial. One had to read very, very carefully that it's not about one factorial, it was factorial of factorial. That's where the charm of CAT comes into picture. They pick up the easiest concept that you know, and then they create a question that deserves the platform. So sometimes you have to just admire what they do with the paper. And there was this really simple question of sine theta as well. It was either you take it or leave it. It was as simple as that. Either you will crack it in few seconds or you have to put it aside. About arithmetic, it was lengthy, and it demanded labor, and somehow students get through it. So that was slot 2, not very different than slot 1, I believe, but probably slot 3 had something different to offer.
So as far as slot 3 is concerned, I think in the recent year, we have seen good number of logarithm. And I think even slot 1, I think didn't have anything on logs, I believe, right? And
No,
maybe
there are
one
no.
question from slot 2 had a logarithm, possibly. One maybe, right? Correct. So if you look at the surprises, basically, I would say algebra and geometry was slightly tricky. Arithmetic, if you look at, I think across the slot 1, 2, 3, they were very much doable. Especially the thing became tricky in algebra because they have not straight away asked you what is the value of, let's say, some variable k, but they tend to ask you how many values of, let's say, k or let's say a is possible, and even some of them were theta. So in some cases, we people tend to use jugad, and that was pretty much absent as far as those algebra questions were concerned. Normally, we see very straightforward indices, sir, and even I think the sum on indices with something like root of 7 by 3 raised to something was also on the difficult side. So one question on indices, sir, but that was also on the difficult side. The one on the PNC was manageable. If you have a nice calculator, you can easily crack that particular problem. But with the help of the on-screen calculator, I think you might take good 3 to 4 minutes maybe to write down all the possible 12 numbers and to find out the average. So geometry for me was tricky. I think I left out two questions from geometry. One on the quadrilateral front, I found it to be difficult. And there was one more with the overlapping area that I also found out to be on the difficult side. Numbers was straightforward, but algebra and geometry was tricky. So overall, not a very difficult paper. So out of the 8 questions of arithmetic, you will say good, let's say around 6 of them are going to be very much doable. So those who have the strength in arithmetic can crack and get good marks out of arithmetic. 1 or 2 algebra were doable, 1 or 2 geometry were doable. Modern math, a function question was very difficult because moment you read the problem, you won't be able to make out how to start or what need to be done in the function problem. The one on the sequence series was on the easier side, applying a very basic concept. Numbers also, I think both the questions were very straightforward. So ultimately, if you look at, if you can crack 12 to 13 question, so if you can manage to get a score of 36 or maybe something on that particular range, you are hitting a 19 percentile as far as slot 3 is concerned. But it was a lengthy problem. So there were a few questions on averages where you have some group A and group B with certain average marks given. It was challenging because they've asked you about what is the difference between the max and the minimum number of people in the group A. So that's how, let's say, some of the questions were made tricky. Even one on the time and work, they have asked you a question like A and B worked on day 1, B and C on day 2, A and C on day 3, and so on like this. They've not asked you about how many days it will take to complete the work, but they've asked you in how many days A has worked. So one need to really read the sum very, very carefully and try to answer what has been tested. Even once someone the checks with 100, 500 or something of that sort was there, where you need to find out the
Had to
max
find
number
the
of,
maximum. Yeah,
yeah,
Parmeshwar sir, I
that,
was just going to say that there were
hmm,
sometime, I mean, this is the first time I've seen so many questions on find the maximum possible
hmm.
values or minimum possible values for this equation or for this check in this case. So lots of jugad, I would say, was the only way out for this.
So even in quadratic, they were given you irrational root, and then they asked you some weird thing like ax square plus bx plus c, ax square plus mx plus n, and so on. So things were not very, very straightforward. You need to really understand algebra with the point of view of graphs. If you can relate graphs and algebra together, then maybe people might find couple of questions of algebra to be on the easier side. Otherwise, it was a difficult one or maybe the lengthy one where people can possibly get stuck.
Yeah. So in terms of the comparison between the three slots, Manish sir,
First of all, big disclaimer, none of us has attempted all the three papers today. We tried our best, we couldn't do it. So we have talked a lot today. We have discussed this with other faculty members as well who have attempted the same paper. And we have tried to summarize this in a single slide. So we can't claim that this is going to be foolproof. But this is what at best we could do. So this is our sincere effort to give you as close idea about the difficulty level of three tests across different sections. So I'll also try to explain the thought process that we mentors try to put in while putting each and every word here. I'll start with the VARC section. Slot 1 and slot 2 both had near similar difficulty level as far as VARC section is concerned. But then we all know that the first slot is first slot. Aspirants go without any idea. There is a little more jittery feeling than the second slot aspirants can ever expect. And the first slot students were the one who were surprised by the new variety, if we call it a new variety as such, in the paper. So we would like to give the first slot verbal section a benefit of doubt that students might have performed a little less than the slot 2 students in the verbal section. So we should expect scaling in the upwards direction in the verbal section in the slot 1. With respect to slot 2. Here, probably we are taking slot 2 as the base. With respect to slot 2, slot 1 students will get little more marks after scaling. At the same time, we know that slot 3 was the easiest one as far as verbal section is concerned. We have also given the highest raw score for the 99 percentile in the verbal section for slot 3 only. So that should come down after scaling by a couple of marks. That's what we expect to happen. About LRDI section, we tried our best, but we couldn't find a significant difference between slot 1 and slot 2 as far as difficulty level is concerned. Some scaling may happen, but probably of very negligible margin. One more thing that I would like to add is we can at best discuss the scaling at a particular level here. We can discuss a 99% scaling that can happen at a 99 percentile. The scaling at a different percentile would be different, right? Here we like to discuss from the point of view of 99 percentile equivalent scaling only. Continuing with the DILR section, the third section, well, it was the toughest one as far as LRDA section is concerned. There is no doubt about it. So after scaling, it should get the reward and the scores may go up. To the viewers who are not aware of the scaling or normalization process, please understand a simple thing. CAT creators, the test designers, they try their best to keep all the three sections as close as possible, but it's humanly impossible. So to do justice to the thousands and thousands of takers, they do normalization. So they apply the highest level of mathematics that brings parity, that does justice to the fact that papers were different, but still all the more than 2 lakh test takers are trying for those few seats. So this is probably, I would say, a very fair practice to bring all the scores to a single point after adjusting for difficulty level. It is little debatable as far as which score should go up or down, but we'll have to trust the fact that when they have data of 65,000 takers in each and every slot, probably more, they can do the best statistically. So that is scaling, and that's why scores go up or go down in a particular slot after a scaled score come out. Third section, QA, we found if I compare the first slot with the second slot, well, first slot was little easier than the second slot. A very marginal difference was there. So we are expecting the first slot of quant to little come down after scaling. And at the same time, slot 3 was the most difficult one as far as quant is concerned. And that's why scaling should go in the upwards direction. Now you understand the game. Overall, slot 2 should see minimum scaling. That's what we expect to happen. And other two slots should see some scaling in the upwards direction. Again, this can be taken in the different perspective as well. They can use a different slot as a base as well. So this is a comparison between slot 1, 2, and 3. It may happen that slot 1 might stay stagnant, slot 2 may go down. but this is the relative comparison. So slot 1 may see a 2 to 3 marks of scale upwards, and slot 3 may see a jump of 3 to 4 marks. And with that, a summary of 99 percentile equivalent raw score would be 90, 92, and 88 in the slot 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Over to you, sir.
So in terms of the overall estimate, again, we have the figures in front of you. So you can again take a screenshot of this. So as Manish sir mentioned, we are looking at 90, 92, and 88 as the 99 percentile values for the individual slots that we have. The other figures are also in front of you. Now again, the same disclaimer, right? We have tried to come up with the numbers on the basis of what our interactions with the students had been, plus the questions that we saw in the overall experience that we have had over the last many years. The revised estimates will be made available to you maybe a couple of days after the response sheet is out, which should be out soon. So, or ideally, it should be out soon. So once that is out, we'll have more clarity in terms of what exactly will the percentiles look like, and that is when we will come up with revised estimates. So it's recommended that you don't make any major decisions on the basis of the numbers that you see in front of your screen. This is essentially to just tell you what it might look like, right? So don't get all excited or all saddened by the numbers that you are seeing in front of you. We'll go to the section-wise tables as well quickly. So verbal ability reading combination. Abhishek sir, any thoughts?
Right. So as Manish sir and Shashank sir have both spoken about this, and we discussed initially as well. The third slot was comparatively the easiest of the three. So of course the raw scores are going to go up, which is visible on the table. Lucky for us, because by then the other reason for that is it's not just that the passages were slightly on the more readable side or the questions were slightly less ambiguous or something. It's just that by the time you get to the third slot, you hear a lot of things and you're somehow sort of a little bit better prepared. So that also probably explains why this slot, people might end up scoring a little bit more. But like we keep saying all the time, CAT, as Manisha also said, we'll try to keep things as fair as possible. So the variance in slots will not be too much. If you notice, the change is only probably 4 or 5 marks. At the worst case, it's 6 marks, which is 1 or maybe 2 questions. So a question or two here and there, you don't need to worry about. Probably at the higher end of the percentile spectrum, yes, but don't worry. 99 percentile is somewhere close to 45, which is 15 net correct, which is exactly what we talked about, right? Something around 19 attempts and 16 correctly should get you that number. And yeah, that is again speaking for slot 3 because I took slot 3. Rest of them, yes, as per the other findings, everything is on track. And don't worry, guys. Like we said, these are just initial estimates. Once the raw scores and all that come out, we'll be in a much better position to comment on what happens post this.
All right. Again, we'll quickly cover data interpretation, logical reasoning. So again, we have mentioned it that in the first couple of slots, 8 to 10 or 10 to 12 questions that they would have done the deal. So 30, 31 are the marks corresponding to a 99 percentile in slots 1 and 2. And in slot 3, we have brought it slightly lower because of the overall complexity and what the students described. So maybe in the conquest of attempting another set, people would have got maybe a couple of incorrects in those random attempts that would have been made. And that's why slot 3 is at a slightly lower level compared to the first 2 slots that we have. We can also see 97, 95, 90, 85, 80 percentile and the corresponding figures that are there. Initially, there will be a smaller difference, but as we progress downwards, of course, the gap will increase. And that has been the case in terms of the past normalization instances that we have seen when it comes to the CAT. All right. Something you want to add, Manish sir, Parmeshwar sir?
Nothing much, sir.
So we'll also look at the quantitative aptitude section. So again, we said that as the day progressed, the quantitative aptitude section kept on increasing in terms of level of difficulty. So the morning slot, we have kept it at 37, the 99 percentile, the score corresponding to the 99 percentile. 36 for slot 2, 33 for slot 3. So effectively, maybe one question per slot, we kept on saying was uh, less than the previous one. So that is basically what it looks like. Again, you can see the whole set of percentiles and the scores corresponding to it. Again, don't make any decisions on the basis of this table. It's a very strong disclaimer from our side. And we'll come up with updated figures and percentiles as we go ahead, right? We will get the revised percentile estimates maybe a couple of days after the response sheet is released. Going by historical data, 10th December or roughly around that period is when the response sheet should be out. And that is basically when we'll come up with the percentile as well. We will have the score calculator and everything in place. So make sure that you upload your scores and make the best use of the tool that we have. Yeah. So any concluding remarks, Manish sir, Abhishek sir, Parmeshwar sir, for people who are going to take other tests?
Remarks are always pretty simple. Oh, yes, please.
Sorry. So VARC, because SNAP, IFT, and NMAT are all sort of lined up for a lot of people. Just quickly focus on your vocab and grammar bits again. Just go through your grammar rules, etc. Try and solve more questions on things like analogies, syllogs, and your statement, argument, and statement course of action, those sorts of things. Practice a little bit more on skimming and solving your RCs rather than just reading and going through the questions. Maybe the questions first approach is the way to go. As regards all of these papers. Of course, we will have more detailed sessions on how to crack IFT and how to crack SNAP, etc. The NMAT session, if you're aware, is already up on the website and it has been for a while. So please go through that as well. Something similar will come up soon. The date for the raw score, sorry, the response sheet is given as 10 December. My suggestion, till 23rd December, don't download that response sheet. Right? No one wants to get any sort of estimates as to what is going to happen. If this is my score, what should I expect, etc. Again, this might be a very controversial opinion, but my suggestion is it's going to be there on your portal for a long, long time. So just leave it, just focus on the other exams at hand, and just make sure all of these new topics of verbal are also covered. That's it from my side for PA. Thank you.
The fact that CAT is a different exam. NMAT SNAP have a different mood altogether. So it is strongly recommended that you plan a schedule of attempting mock NMATs and mock SNAPs in next few days, so that you come out of the mood of CAT that is usually slow. You go for accuracy. You have good difficulty level of questions. Whereas in SNAP and NMAT, you find the questions to be really easy. You have to tell yourself that you have to run. So just to be adjusted to a different difficulty level that is actually easy, you'll have to attempt some mock papers on regular basis. So sit with the batch mentor and get a plan of when should you attempt a mock SNAP, mock NMAT, because there will be overlapping. You might have a MyCAT 1 in next few days. You might have taken an NMAT date in next few days, and you know where the SNAP lies. So make a plan. And then, as Abhishek sir said, just prepare the additional varieties. For example, vocab and grammar are the highlight of NMAT and SNAP. So prepare them accordingly.
Parmeshwar sir?
So now CAT is over. So it's not the done and dusted. Basically, you have to look for that, IFT, etc. as well. So please don't give up at this particular moment, irrespective of how have you performed, good or bad. So please focus on this particular month of December and January and crack other exams as well.
Yeah, so very good advice again. Same thing if I were to say as well.
GK, IFT, GK.
GK क्या करोगे?
We have to focus on GK as well, and
decision making.
All these exams have a soul of their own. So there is no point getting stuck with what happened in terms of CAT. Take it as a learning experience. Whatever you learn today is a very valuable lesson. If you have done really well, you have to approach the other test with the same fearless attitude that you approach CAT. I'm sure you would do very well. If you sort of not did as well as you would have liked to, maybe take that as a learning and see where exactly is it that you fumbled. maybe you spent a lot of time on some question that you would not wanted to have. So make sure that you don't repeat the same mistake at the other tests. As Manish sir mentioned, Abhishek sir mentioned, Parmeshwar sir mentioned, you have to understand what SNAP, NMAT, IFT, ISNET, MyCat, CET, CMAT, whatever test you're going to take, XAT, right? So all those tests, you have to understand how exactly to tackle each of them. The basics remain the same. Just that you have to figure out what exactly is it that will make that 5-10% difference. We will be coming up with videos for the IFT, ZAT, and so on. Some of the videos are already up, as Abhishek sir mentioned. So stay tuned for that. So I hope all of you had a good time listening to this session and had a better understanding of what the test was like at the end of the day. We wish you all the best for your journey ahead, and yeah, hopefully all of you will achieve your dreams and get into the schools and the organizations of your choice. So good luck with everything. Stay tuned for more such updates from IMS. Do subscribe to the channel, like this video, and if you have any comments or queries, do put it in the comment section below. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. All the best, everyone.